Hello, everybody. Welcome back. Got a little bit of a rant about the ATR. One of the release notes that they gave in when they put out the update recently was something to the effect that the DME distance calculation error had been corrected. Now, first of all, the ATR does not have DME. DME is a specific piece of a physical equipment. It's like a radio, which the ATR, certainly this version of the ATR, does not have. It's like saying we've corrected the ADF problems when there's no ADF in the airplane. So the ATR does not have a DME. A DME is a specific piece of equipment that is not in this airplane. You can substitute GPS distances for DME distances. So it doesn't technically matter for IFR flying in this airplane. So the fact that they got the name of the equipment wrong doesn't really matter. What does matter, and the fact is that explanation or that statement doesn't, without any context, doesn't make sense. So I've pointed this out in the past that there is an issue with the distances from the final approach fix, which is what in this chart here is Iluva, which is where the Maltese cross is. The distance from this waypoint on RNAV approaches to the runway threshold waypoint, right? I've pointed this out before. Unfortunately, I cannot bring this up in the official forums because I got thrown out of the official forums um, for reasons that just don't matter. But I assumed when I saw this notification or this statement in the release notes for the ATR that this error had been fixed. I reached out to Hans Hartmann directly to point out this problem. I did not get a response from him, um, but my assumption was when I saw this statement that the DME distance error had been corrected, that that's what they were talking about, and that this was fixed. It is if this is what they're talking about, it has not been fixed, and it's really really frustrating because without correct distances on an approach, particularly from the final approach fix to the runway, you cannot fly these approaches. You simply can't. Okay. Here is the RNAV 11 approach, RNP 11 approach into Hato International Airport in Curacao. Now you can see Iluva right here. The distance from Iluva to the runway threshold is 6.0. You can see it right here, 6.0. And if that's not enough for you, the distance from Iluva to the 1.9 nautical mile threshold uh, waypoint, which is your visual descent point, is 4.1. And the distance from 1.9 to the threshold is 1.9. Go figure. The distance should be 6.0 nautical miles. Just flew a flight. You can see we are just coming up on Iluva right here. I hope you can see this. I don't know if you really can see it very well. You're going to hear me talking in this because this is a recording I made of the approach. So this is Iluva. This says 0.1 nautical miles. So we'll see what distance it shows once we hit Iluva. You ready?
500 foot
There's
vertical
0.0.
Very, very nice.
6.4. Okay, that's 0.4 nautical miles longer than it should be. Now, my theory as to where this 4/10 of a nautical mile comes from, this is the threshold. This is the displaced threshold. You can't land on this part of the runway. So this is the runway threshold here, right, being Bravo. Um, the airport reference point is the GPS pinpoint GPS location of where the airport is. So if you're flying inbound to this airport and your FMC says you're 76.3 nautical miles away, this is a big piece of real estate right here. What are you 76.3 nautical miles away from? You're 76 nautical miles away from this, the airport reference point. Okay. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to fast forward here a little bit to let's see. Let's go just a little bit further, not quite that far. And again, you're going to see,
Approaching Manhattan traffic here.
let's see, where are we? Right about here, a little bit further. Okay, and now we're going to come up
I
to,
cannot be convinced
see, this is me complaining.
that the indications in the PFD are correct. I just can't.
Okay, and here we see runway 11. That's the RW11 waypoint, which, if we go back to the chart, is this waypoint right here. RW11 is 0 miles from the threshold of the runway. And the threshold of the runway is right here at Bravo. Okay? Now let's go to the video and see where we are. That's Charlie. That's taxiway Charlie. This is runway 11 waypoint, which we are 0.0 nautical miles from. We are 1 second away from it. And it's just before Charlie. Here's Charlie. Here's the airport reference point just before Charlie. So my theory is that the airport reference point is what they are giving the distance to. So the distance from the glide slope intercept from the final approach fix where the Maltese cross is, which is supposed to be 6.0 miles to the threshold of the runway, is actually giving you the distance from Iluva to the airport reference point, which is about here, partway down the runway. Okay? And so I went back and checked a couple flights that I did recently. This is on our way into, this one's really pretty obvious. This is on our way into Antigua 2 days ago. There is a waypoint on the approach into Antigua called, it's waypoint 40THR, which is 4.0 nautical miles from the threshold of the runway. They literally named the waypoint out after the distance from that waypoint to the threshold of the runway. 4.0. 2.4 plus 1.6 is 4.0. Okay? So we're coming up on this 4.0 nautical mile waypoint in this approach. You can see right here 4.0 threshold, 0.0 nautical miles, and it should be 4 nautical miles when we pass it. Now watch what it's going to show us. 4.5. 4.5. It's a half a mile off. Okay. Unfortunately, in at VC Bird, this airport, I can't find anywhere where the airport reference point is. So I can't quite prove my theory looking at this airport. However, I flew into Piarco yesterday. Here we are coming up on Talus. We are 0.2 nautical miles from Talus. Talus is this waypoint right here, this waypoint right here, the glide slope intercept, final approach fix. The distance from Talus to the runway 10 threshold is 5.1 nautical miles. Now, let's watch and see what it shows us once we cross Talus.
Right. Autopilot away my airplane.
0.1, 0.0, it initially shows 5.9, then it shows 5.8. So this shows, so instead of being 5.1, it shows 5.9 for a split second and then 5.8. And if we look at the Piarco airport diagram, the airport reference point is pretty much halfway down this 10,490 foot long runway, which would mean it's give or take, you could convince me it's zero point 0.8 miles from the threshold of the runway to the airport reference point, which is how much this distance is incorrect. So I just like I said, the statement doesn't make any sense. The airplane does not have DME. But the only distance issue that I'm aware of with this airplane that would really make any difference, if you're 50 miles from the airport and the distance is zero point 0.5 nautical miles off. Big deal. What difference does it make? If you're at top of descent and your distance to the airport is zero point 0.5 nautical miles off, big deal. It doesn't make any difference. If you are 5 miles from the runway and the distance, on the approach, on glide slope, on the approach, and the distance given is a half a mile off, that is a big, big problem. Um, so I just I don't know what to do. I don't know what to say, um, except for the fact that, I mean, for me, I can compensate for this based on the fact that I fly in the Caribbean 98.7% of the time. And yes, I did calculate that, by the way. So it doesn't make any difference to me. This is my view from 5 miles from every airport that I go to. There's rarely IFR conditions. This is an airplane that's heavily used throughout the world, throughout Europe, throughout South America, throughout North America, throughout Asia, where the weather isn't crystal clear every day. And with this error, unless it's me, unless I'm missing something, unless I'm making a mistake, uh, this airplane is a VFR only airplane. You cannot fly approaches that are a half a mile wrong. You just can't do it. Now, some RNAV approaches do not have a runway waypoint. I'll give you an example. Uh, let's Actually, this might not be an example now that I think about it. And it is. It is an example. This is Princess Juliana. This is the RNAV 10 approach to Princess Juliana. Lessor, 5.1 nautical miles from the runway. But there is no runway threshold waypoint, so there's no distance that it's giving you. Your missed approach point on this approach is 2 miles from the runway. So you've either got the runway in sight at 2 nautical miles and you're disconnecting the autopilot and visually hand flying that approach, or you're not. When you're flying into Piarco, you've got the runway 10 waypoint. When you're flying into VC Bird, you've got the runway 7 waypoint. And when you're flying into Curacao, you've got the threshold 11 waypoint. Let's look at another one, TNCA. Let's look at Antigua, and Aruba rather. RNP 11. This one does not have uh, a threshold waypoint. The RNP, yeah, so the RNP 29 approach for the other runway has a runway 29 approach. So these distances, the reason they give you these distances is so you can cross check and make sure you're at the altitude you want to be at and at the distance from the runway that you think you're supposed to be. And these are just consistently wrong. They are all wrong. It's not like one or two of them are wrong. Every single one that I have flown in the updated ATR is wrong. Um, as I mentioned before, I cannot bring this issue up to Asobo because I cannot use the official forums. I'll tell you for fun and giggles, the reason I got thrown out of the forums is because I complained about them not enforcing their own rules, um, and they didn't like that, and I didn't, I mean, I'm not a crazy person. I was not like rude or using bad language. I just was annoyed at the fact that they would consistently not enforce their own rules. Doesn't matter. Bottom line is, I can't post this there, and this is a VFR only airplane now for me, which for me is fine. For 98% of the other users that are trying to use this airplane for IFR flying, it's not fine. And I just don't know what to do. I don't think there's anything to do. It's been 3 months, between the last two updates, so you can only conceive, only guess that it's going to be 2 months until the next update, or 3 months, or whatever. So it is what it is. RNAV issue, the distance issue in the ATR has not been fixed, and it is a flight critical issue, and I'm really frustrated about it. So, um, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know what I'm going to do personally, but I at least want to make you guys aware of this issue, that it exists, and explain it to you, so you're not sitting there thinking you're crazy. Why are my approaches not working? Um, I haven't flown an ILS approach since this plane updated. That's next up. I know last time I tried to fly one with before the update, they didn't work. So I'll give that another go and report back. But as far as the RNAV approaches go, they don't work. And I'm using Navigraph data. These are payware airports, but they're three different payware airports from different developers. I don't think the airport is the issue. Maybe I should just remove the three airports and then fly the approaches again and see what happens. I don't know if I can remove the nav data, but I think the ATR uses Microsoft Flight Simulator nav data rather than the Navigraph nav data anyway. So I don't know. I'm confused, um, which granted happens quite often. But I'm pretty irritated at this. So I just wanted to share this with you guys. So let me know what you guys think, what your experiences are with this airplane since the update in terms of RNAV approaches. Hope everybody's doing well, and we'll talk soon.